Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here. Many new faces. I've been teaching in Malaysia 7 years, coming down doing a period of teaching, but mostly with same group of people, and beginning to accept invitations to new places. I was explaining to Brother Tan, normally my preference is to teach a 9 or 10 day retreat, because as a meditation monk who lives on a mountain in a remote part of Thailand, what we do is we learn how to focus on a repetitive disciplined meditation and work on that for decades, so that in a way the people that I find easiest for me to teach are people who I can work with in a focused way for a period of time. But since most people these days are quite busy, I've made a personal aspiration or decision to try to develop my abilities as a teacher, to try to help people in a situation that they are in. And so this is one of my attempts. And so Chinese Malaysians, quite, it seems in this age, are quite fortunate in as much as the karmic connections with the various Buddhist traditions. So you do have many experienced elders, great monks and nuns passing through, and you are able to attend Dhamma talks and do meditation retreats with some frequency. So that is clearly your good karma, your good past karmic roots. I was giving some reflection to, I'll refer to what Ajahn Achalo teaches. So I think it's probably the case that many people do a retreat and their efforts are more diligent for a period of time. And I remember I did my first retreat when I was 21. It was a Vipassana style Goenka retreat. After the retreat, I meditated for an hour in the morning and an hour at night for about 2 months, which became an hour a day for the next few months, which became 45 minutes for the next 6 months, which became 20 minutes a day. So does that sound familiar? So I think a challenge that we have is it's very skillful to do a retreat, to become inspired, to see the value of the practice, to experience the value of the practice. That when we really have better mindfulness and some concentration and some wisdom, these spiritual powers, that we suffer less, that we have more clarity. But then life itself is always more complicated than we would prefer. And I think, speaking about your strengths, being in Malaysia, that you can have access to good Dhamma teachings and see good practitioners frequently. I think one of the challenges you have is your working hours. So I think people in Australia, for example, most people would have more set working hours. From what I can tell in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of overtime, there's a lot of working late. And then you also have your family obligations, so which is also a lot more than people in the West. Your Cheng Meng, your Chinese New Year, your weddings, graduations, all of that. So in some respects you have less spare time. So what do you do? It's a good question, isn't it? What do we do? What do we do to get more practice, more? So I've been giving some thought to that, and So looking at Lord Buddha's Eightfold Path can be abbreviated as Dana, Sila and Bhavana. Most Malaysians are practicing generosity, those who have faith. Sila can be hard in cities when the general trend is towards less virtue in the world, and keeping the sila very strictly can be challenging. So I think it's important that we understand it as a training, and I think the daily meditation practice is incredibly important as a support to purifying the virtue, because it's clarity of mind that will help you to see the true benefits of keeping the precepts strictly and the drawbacks of not keeping them. Because the mind, we are affected by ignorance and delusion, and so we can justify deludedly why we might think breaking the precepts is okay. But if we're really cultivating mindfulness, having a look at the quality and texture of our mind each day, we'll be able to see what the actual result of keeping the precept, not keeping the precepts is. So in terms of really making a difference to your samsaric situation, what is the samsaric situation? We are affected by ignorance. It's good to have a look at some of these basics. We're affected by ignorance. This is actually the root cause of all of our suffering, all of our problems. What is ignorance? Ignorance is not knowing. What is it that we don't know? We don't know the true nature of the way things are. Because we don't know the true nature of conditions, what Lord Buddha calls conditions, we perceive them incorrectly. So that's delusion. Avidya, and then you have moha. Because of delusion, we think we're a self. I think the body and the mind is a self. And because we think it's the body and mind is a self, we have a lot of problems. The things that we like, the things that we don't like, experiences we want to have, experiences we don't want to have, the type of being we want to become, all of the various types of craving. But the craving is on a foundation of ignorance. So the remedy to ignorance, not knowing, is to begin to know. The first noble truth, unsatisfactoriness. All conditions have an unsatisfactory nature. Lord Buddha explains that is to be known. Dukkha is to be known. So a lot of human beings' life is trying to run away from dukkha. Some of that is intelligent, some of it is neurotic. Certain amount of dukkha we can't run away from, and we have to just have a look at it. Because Lord Buddha explains that the dukkha has a cause, and the cause can be abandoned. And he did it. He knew dukkha, he understood the cause, the craving based upon ignorance. He did abandon it. How did he abandon it? He abandoned it by following the Eightfold Path, or this threefold training in Dana, Sila and Bhavana. So basically we need to do practices that are going to increase our mindfulness. What is mindfulness? I mean, it's good to ask these basic questions. What is ignorance? What is delusion? What is mindfulness? Ajahn Menindo sometimes translates mindfulness as truth discerning awareness. So we all have some awareness. You wouldn't be able to get up and go to the bathroom and put on your shoes and drive your cars without some mindfulness. So we have mindfulness. I think it's very important to differentiate between fuzzy mindfulness, scattered mindfulness, weak mindfulness, poor mindfulness, and good mindfulness. Because this tendency that we have to say, just be mindful. You can do whatever you like throughout the day, but just be mindful. If you're doing unskillful things, the mindfulness isn't good. It's not good mindfulness. So, good mindfulness, when we talk about the four foundations of mindfulness, mindfulness will understand a body as a body, and a thought as a thought, a feeling as a feeling, and it will know if mindfulness with wisdom will know if a mind state is wholesome or unwholesome. So there's these other qualities that have to be present for mindfulness to be good mindfulness. It's often in Thai, sati sampajanya is translated as mindfulness with clear comprehension. Clear comprehension is a sense of context and a sense of knowing what is skillful, what is unskillful, the kusala and the akusala. So Tanajananand explains that the Eightfold Path, it's not a sculpture of a Dhamma wheel, it's not a list of words in a sutta. These are symbols and these are the map. These are the descriptions. The Eightfold Path is something that needs to be turning in our hearts and minds. If the Eightfold Path is turning in your heart and mind, right mindfulness, right thought, based upon right livelihood, right intention, all of these things, becomes right samadhi. If that is functioning, path factors are functioning in your mind, the root kilesas, greed, hatred, and delusion, will be being destroyed. They'll be being weakened steadily and uprooted. In seeing the nature of conditions, understanding the nature of conditions with right mindfulness, that they arise, that they cease, that they're based on previous conditions, what is able to occur is that you are able to experience the unconditioned, and you experience that in your mind. So Ajahn Sumedho places a lot of emphasis upon the present moment Dhamma. If we practice very sincerely now, today, you should be able to experience some freedom from suffering, at least momentarily. If you have right mindfulness and if you have right thought, some mindfulness and wisdom, some concentration, you can have experience of what my teacher Tanajananand calls temporary liberation. You can experience some space, some distance from delusion, from ignorance, from defilements, and you should derive a lot of confidence about your deeper nature, your true potential. But if we aren't, the thing about mindfulness is it is also a condition. It's one of the most important conditions that leads to the unconditioned. So the Eightfold Path is a karmic path. It's something that we have to generate with intention and we have to maintain in being. So in one of the weeks after Lord Buddha was enlightened under the Bodhi tree, when he was reviewing after 4 asankhya and 100,000 eons of cultivation, millions of lives, Lord Buddha was reviewing his remarkable accomplishment, his realization, his liberation from all suffering. And he was like, what made this possible? How was this possible? This extraordinary experience of complete liberation from every type of suffering. And there's 2 lists that he mentioned in particular, very short lists. And I think we're very lucky as Theravadan Buddhists. I think sometimes there's a lot of, one of the strengths is the simplicity. We can have a look at these simple lists. It's not difficult to understand this. And of course we can study in more detail, but we basically understand the simple list, dana, sila, and bhavana. It's not that hard. But his realization after the Bodhi tree, when he was reviewing his accomplishment, his statement, these 4 foundations of mindfulness, when cultivated, made much of, lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. That's a very profound and amazing statement, and it's extremely helpful for us. Basically, if we have enough mindfulness, we keep cultivating mindfulness upon a foundation. You're not going to have good mindfulness if you don't have generosity and sila. That's the foundation. So if you have that foundation, you keep up your practices that create mindfulness, support mindfulness, then you're on the straight path to Nibbana. So that's very affirming. And the problem is, if we stop and start, it tends to be the case, Tanajananand says, that if the path isn't destroying the defilements and the ignorance, well then the ignorance and the defilements are destroying the path. So that's probably a lot of people's experiences during retreats. you can get some good clarity, some good spaciousness, radiant states of mind, see things more clearly, have some experience of letting go, some temporary liberations. And then the busyness and complicatedness of life comes back, and things get a bit darker. So we need to think in terms of what can I do more consistently? What can I do in my daily life that's going to support the growth of mindfulness? And so I've been giving some thought to that for people who live in the city, and also what Ajahn, my teacher, recommends. So I think this practice of chanting, and I do think that meditation in the morning is a good thing to aim for. If you hope to maintain mindfulness throughout the day and strengthen your quality of mindfulness and wisdom, then we need to be generating it in the morning, because it's something that's volitionally generated. And by trying to check in with your mindfulness throughout the day, that's a way of maintaining it. But if you don't actually do something to generate it, clarify it, cultivate it, you don't actually have much to check in with. So, as I was saying, mindfulness can be scattered, can be weak, can be fuzzy. So this is the value of when we take a meditation object such as breathing. We're applying the mindfulness to be aware of an object within a smaller sphere. And so what happens is when we use the breath, we're able to see a thought as a thought and not follow along with it. We're able to see feelings as feelings and not be concerned whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. So much of life is commenting about the pleasant and the unpleasant of the experience that we have with the sense bases, eyes, sounds, smells, tastes. How much do Malaysians think about food, for example? You have an obsession with noodles, I've noticed. So, good noodles, good noodles. But when you come to meditate, a thought is just a thought, feeling is just a feeling, sense contact is just sense contact. It doesn't matter if it's pleasant or unpleasant. You just rest with the breath, keep coming back with the breath. But we need to wake up, and we need to do, in the morning we actually need to wake up as well. And we need to remind ourselves of our refuge. Refuge is a wonderful and profound thing, often not understood. Buddha as refuge, Buddha experienced his true potential. When he taught the 5 disciples and Anya Kondanya became the first stream enterer, and then they all became arahants, when Lord Buddha taught the Sutra on Not Self, then this is evidence and points to the fact that Lord Buddha didn't just realize his potential, he realized the potential of all human beings. And those 5 disciples proved that. Anybody who has path factors functioning, anybody who generates the 5 spiritual powers, trains oneself, the 5 faculties to become powerful. Faith, right? Faith. Faith gives rise to energy. Then mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. That was the other list Lord Buddha was looking at, contemplating in the 7 weeks after his enlightenment. These 5 spiritual powers lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. So, refuge in your potential, refuge in Buddha, is a huge affirmation about the fact that you can be liberated. And then refuge in Dhamma, that's nature. The deeper nature of your body and mind is that greed, hatred, and ignorance can be removed. And in the process, the mind is purified. The purified mind is liberated. So refuge is incredibly affirming, positive, optimistic thing. We're very lucky. When you think about theistic religions, and this sense that people have of a judgmental God that they have to try and please, and they love him so much and they pray to him and they feel such devotion, and horrible things still keep happening in their life, and they might have to have this experience of pleading with God, I love you so much, why do you keep punishing me? Why don't you help me? It's actually a very painful experience, which we don't have to have. We understand the suffering that we have is a result of the bad karma we made under the influence of greed, hatred, and delusion. We don't have to blame anybody, we don't have to feel sorry for ourselves, but we do have to take responsibility. And we can. Lord Buddha has given us the tools with which we can take responsibility. So, mindfulness, we have to cultivate it. And we have to remind ourselves, I have a better potential than this. This greed, hatred, and delusion, where Ajahn Mahabua talks about the kilesas walking all over your heart, like, dirty boots on a doormat. And he's like trying to get people, put up a fight. Don't put up with this. Don't let these kilesas, stomp all over your heart. Because we have a choice. We can kick the kilesas out. You can have a radiant, clear, bright, beautiful mind. But it takes work. So the daily practice is important, and I do think morning is better. And I do think chanting is very helpful. Energetic, fast, loud chanting. You can't chant loudly, particularly if you do a more complicated chant like one of the suttas, the Dhammacakka Sutta. You can't chant that loudly and quickly for 20 minutes and think about something else. You can't. If you chant it slowly, you probably can. But and softly, you fall asleep halfway. But there are ways to chant. And there are many, many benefits of chanting. Just to consider, people have been chanting these teachings for 2,600 years. The first generations of monks and nuns learnt them by memory. This is a teaching that was handed down to us. You just kind of think of the value of this chant, the Dhammacakka Sutta, for example, or the Metta Sutta, the Sutta on the Highest Blessings, any of these wonderful suttas. And then you think that beings who were liberated contemplating these teachings that did not become arahants and anagamis, millions of beings who were stream enterers and sakadagamis are probably in heaven realms now, experiencing some of their last births. So that's a beautiful reflection. Sometimes we can get depressed, the sasana is degenerating, Actually, the sasana isn't degenerating, people are degenerating. And the sasana is those who practice correctly. There is still some who practice correctly, and that's the true sangha. That can be monks or lay people. And somebody who just wears a robe is not sangha. Lay people who practice diligently. Tanajan Ganha once said, he was a nephew of Lumpur Cha, he said, the true Buddhist religion is mindfulness and wisdom. That's what, so the people who have mindfulness and wisdom in the world, they're the Buddhasasana. And obviously if a monk or nun is practicing well, hopefully they have a lot of mindfulness and wisdom. So chanting, to wake the mind up, to not think about the other stuff that you're going to have to think about once you finish your meditation. Think about your refuge, think about your aspiration, and put it first. Because we can't take for granted that Buddhism will still be in the world next life. And a lot of people say, well, okay, I'll be a disciple of Maitreya. I don't think people realize, but Maitreya is coming in a long, long time. Sense of perspective for samsara. Apparently before this eon, there were at least 20 eons with no Buddhas. We had Sikhi and Wesabu Buddha 20 eons before, and then no Buddhas for 20 eons. This is the fortunate eon where we're taught that there will be 5 Buddhas. Shakyamuni Buddha was the 4th, Maitreya is yet to come, but even one eon, such a huge amount of time. In one prophecy that I read, written in Burma, a commentarial prophecy, their estimation of when Maitreya would come was in 300 million years. I don't think they were exaggerating. It might have been an underestimation. If what our Buddha said about Maitreya, he said human beings will have a lifespan of 80,000 years at that time. And there'll be no wars, no disease. The only disease in the time of Maitreya will be aging and death. So that doesn't look like our world now. Our world now has more conflicts, more disease, less virtue, shrinking lifespan if you look at the average. So he's not coming soon, and we better knuckle down. And the thing is, to be born in the time of Maitreya, you're going to have enormous merits. And you think about what kind of merit do you think you would need to have to be born in a world where there's no disease, no prejudice, no bigotry, and human beings have a lifespan of 80,000 years, and you get to hang out with Maitreya Buddha. That's a pretty significant amount of merit you're going to need. And in the between this life and when Maitreya Buddha comes, what are the chances that you might make some bad karma? Pretty good chance, I'd say. So this is the opportunity that we have with this Buddha, and whatever practice we can do, that's what's going to create the merit that will increase the likelihood of meeting Buddha Maitreya. And what's Buddha Maitreya going to teach? He's going to teach the 4 foundations of mindfulness that lead to the deathless and merge in the deathless. So we have our instructions, we have our teachings, we have our good opportunity, we have the human birth. What is left is for us to focus consistently and give the suitable priority. That's why I'm suggesting that we start our days with some meditation, and then the chance of being able to bring mindfulness into your life is going to be so much better. You do 20 minutes of chanting, 40 minutes of sitting, and then you can be mindful throughout the day. What's the value of being mindful? I was speaking with some of the yogis who did the retreat with me recently, and they do say things like, I notice when I'm upset and I can stop myself saying something. And so it's not the case that we won't be upset, but it is the case that you can know you're upset. And it is the case that you can stop yourself saying the thing that you might say out of reactivity. You can say, stop, don't say that. If you have to say something, you can think about it. This is the right thought, right speech. You can actually think about what's the skillful way to say it, what's the right time to say it. Maybe it's better not saying anything at all. Then you don't make bad karma from a harsh speech that hurts people's feelings. So there are a lot of benefits to mindfulness. And the benefits of daily meditation, as I was saying, in training in virtue, is that when you do break the precepts and you come to your meditation cushion, invariably you don't feel good about it. And then you have to weigh. So as I was saying, it's not some joyless, mean God saying, you guys can't have any fun. I'm the ruler of the universe. I get to have all the fun, but you guys have to be miserable. It's not like that. Lord Buddha's teachings on virtue is an expression of compassion, intelligence, and wisdom. And your keeping your precepts purely is an intelligent expression of compassion and wisdom towards yourself and to those around you. Because if you kill beings, your own lifespan will be shortened. If you steal from others, even if you become wealthy, you will lose your wealth. So it's a karmic universe that you're living in, and the precepts help you to live within a container that supports your human situation where you can practice. And if you break, Ajahn says, if you're not keeping the 5 precepts, you're not actually a human being. So you have a human body, but the mind isn't functioning on the human level. So 5 precepts is preserving and maintaining your humanity, and Lord Buddha's teachings lead to heaven and beyond. But if you want to go to heaven and beyond, at the very least, you have to maintain your humanity. That doesn't mean that we never make mistakes. And most important thing when we do make a mistake is that we learn from it. So I'd like to encourage you not to justify when you break the precepts, and not to make excuses for it, and not to be in denial. It's really, really good to be truthful. I broke the precepts because I was greedy. I broke the precept because I had aversion. I broke the precept because I wanted to delight in being deluded. Be truthful and have a look at the consequence. And if you do have a daily meditation practice, you will realize through your own efforts and your own clarity that when you keep the precepts, you have more self-respect, less remorse, more confidence, beautiful qualities of inner clarity and joy. And when you break them, you'll have more worry, more anxiety, less clarity, and you'll see over time it's not worth it. And it will give you the inner strength, the energy. We're talking about spiritual powers. When you practice daily, consistently, you will develop an integrity, an inner power that will give you the guts, in a way, to put up a fight. And you'll have the confidence in the value of it. So if your friends say, come on, just one drink, you'll be more, you'll be willing to put up with being teased and ridiculed because you know you have something better. It's like, no, I don't need the drink. Go ahead and tease me. I'm taking care of my true humanity because I'm aspiring to go to heaven and beyond. But it's the daily practice that's going to give the mindfulness the integrity, and it's going to make it possible to have moments or periods of right collectedness, samadhi. It's going to give you steady strength of heart and courage to protect your potential, cultivate your potential, and realize your potential. But it is a path that we have to cultivate. Lord Buddha points the way. Nobody can do it for us. So, with the chanting, it's good if we enjoy it, if it becomes something we enjoy. So there's a lot of chanting. You can have a look at, of all the chants, what chants do you like? Some people like to chant the paritas. Some people like to do the morning or evening chanting. Some people like to chant suttas. I recommend changing it. Like, for example, at my monastery, sometimes we do the full evening chanting, sometimes we do the Dhammacakka Sutta, sometimes we do the paritas, sometimes we do the funeral chanting, which is the Abhidhamma lists. If you have a bit of variety and you study the meanings of the suttas, after some time if you read in English the Dhammacakka Sutta once a week and you chant it twice a week, after a couple of months you will know while you're chanting it in Pali, I'm chanting the first noble truth, I'm chanting the second noble truth, I'm chanting the third noble truth, and you will know. Buddha says dukkha is to be known. The cause of dukkha is to be abandoned. The cause of dukkha is abandoned. The path is to be cultivated. You will know as you're chanting these things, these wonderful affirming verses about Lord Buddha's teachings and path. But it's one of the, it's like treasure, a rough diamond. It needs to be cut and it needs to be polished, and then you will see the value and the beauty. Chanting practice can be something that becomes a true treasure in your life. And think about when we get older. Recently, my second monk had cranial bleeding inside his brain, and we didn't know what the problem was because apparently he hit his head 6 months ago, and memory was getting worse and worse, and we thought we better get a scan, and it turns out that there was a blood clot, and as it was hardening, it was pressing against the brain, and his memory, it was affecting his memory. So I had to drill a hole in the skull, let the blood out. And so he told me that waking up in the HDU, High Dependency Unit, that he was chanting the Metta Sutta. Wow, that's great. So obviously his memory came back, thank goodness, as soon as the pressure of the blood was released. I was talking to the doctor on the phone, and he said, yeah, Ajahn, this kind of thing, it's not that dangerous. All we do is drill a hole in the skull. He said, the blood will rush out like lava from a volcano, and then tomorrow he'll be fine. I'm like, are you sure? Well, normally like that, some risk, but normally like that, okay. So when I saw him before he went in for the surgery, he didn't really know who he was or where he was. The next day I saw him and he really did. And so I don't know how many of you had surgery, but when you come out of that anesthetic and you have to then try and urinate for the first time, it's a pretty miserable experience. So he was in that experience, he was chanting the Metta Sutta. So this is the result of if you have a regular practice. You have something to draw on when you need it. And I think it's a tremendous support. He knew the words, he also knew what they mean. And so rather than it being a miserable experience, well, it's probably still a miserable experience, but he had something to support him through a miserable experience. And that's the kind of thing that having these daily practices, they gain a momentum, they gain a strength, and they become a true refuge. But we are the ones that have to take that diamond and cut it and polish it, and then it reveals its value over time. So doing some chanting, contemplating the meaning of the chanting, affirming your potential, and putting your priorities straight. If your spiritual practice is one of your priorities, it's good to do it first thing in the morning. It's good to do it every day rather than last thing, and give it the appropriate focus, because you'll get the benefits within this life: more clarity, less remorse, periods of feeling not oppressed by the hindrances and the kilesas, get to glimpse your potential, experience your potential, It also generates the merits that will help you to have future opportunities, and also it's very protective. If you do your daily chanting, you keep your sila, you spread some metta, then it is, the Lord Buddha does say that the devas will protect one. And I was just talking a little earlier about the millions of devas who are Sotapannas and Sakadagamis experiencing one of their last lives. Who do you think they're going to care for? Who do you think they would spread metta to? Who do you think they would try to take care of, other than Buddhist practitioners trying quite hard to improve themselves? So it's good to be aware of the heaven realms. And because the human realm, in a way, we're surrounded by more and more ghost-like and demon-like humans. So we have to look upwards and remember that there are many saint-like devas, and that's what we are aspiring to become as well. So please protect and cultivate and realize your potential, and use the most of your opportunity, and try to have consistent practice, because that is what, over time, will make a deeper impression in uprooting greed, hatred, and ignorance, and help you to realize your potential to experience the unconditioned, a state of unshakable peace with no more suffering. So I offer this for your reflection. Hope something I've said has been helpful.
Okay, we will open to the floor for questions. Any brothers and sisters have any questions, just raise your hand and we'll bring the mic to you.
Ajahn, thank you for the talk. You mentioned that, yes, we're living in a world with less virtue. So when we come across many human beings who are less virtuous and they think the same of you, or when you act with more integrity and kindness towards other people, they say that we are weak or we are soft. How do we manage that situation? Thank you.
So, coming to situations like this and hearing from experienced teachers and then reading the suttas, and, it's like you have to know in your mind that's deluded. But you don't necessarily say it, because you might not get a good reaction. But you can have a quiet confidence. One woman yesterday asked me, she had a 12-year-old son who gets bullied. And she said, "What would you do?" And I say, well, on one level, you don't say anything is the best response, but it doesn't feel strong. So I told her to take him, and he used to learn karate when he was 4. I said, enroll him in Aikido. And, if we know we're strong, doesn't mean we have to fight. But I said, and it's especially for a boy, who's becoming a young man, feel the strength of his body, know that he can defend himself, and know that he can throw them over his shoulder if he has to. But then to have a quiet confidence, and then you just don't care because you know you're stronger. So if you know you're stronger, I suppose it's like having faith in goodness. If you know what you have is better, well, this isn't conceit, this isn't arrogance, this is confidence in Dhamma and the degree to which there is Dhamma in your heart. If you know virtue is stronger, if you know that having a refuge and taking care of your refuge is superior, then it's just like a bunch of ghosts or demonic entities come around and poke their tongues out or whatever. It's like, it's not impressive. I think about the enlightened devas and the Arya Sangha and the 2,600 years of people who practice this way rightly and correctly and who experience the benefits. So, but sometimes we have to be equanimous. So it's like, you just say, well, I have faith in the value of what I'm doing. I'm confident that this is, in the long run, the better. But you can get short-term benefits from being aggressive, obnoxious, competitive, and deceitful. Of course you can. But those benefits, the problem is you're going to meet other people who are deceptive, competitive, and contentious who will steal your benefits away from you. So it's, in the long run, it's not a strategy that will work. So sometimes we have to be willing to have a little less money or not have the best opportunities. Or one of my close students was saying that her husband won't go to the parties where they're drinking, and she said, "You have to go sometimes," and he said, "No, I'm just not going." And he didn't want to be the managing director because he didn't want to write the checks that were actually money laundering, and so he said, "No, I'm not doing that." And the student was saying, "So we don't have the big house, we don't have the German car, we have a terrace house, we have a Japanese car, but we have self-respect." How valuable is that when you put your head down on your pillow at night? Your house is good enough, your car is good enough, and you respect yourself. You've got the big house, the big garden, and the German car, and you know you're dishonest. It's not going to be very comfortable. So I think this is, you have to think of Aikido moves. You let them trip over their own greed, hatred, and delusion, and you quietly keep your sila, samadhi, panya. May I ask how many people do have a daily meditation practice? Please raise your hands. Okay. Less than half. We can do better. How many people from now on will try to have a daily practice? Okay.
Good morning, Ajahn. Can Ajahn elaborate more on the experience of being mindful?
Sorry, can't hear you. Yeah.
Can Ajahn elaborate more on the experience of being mindful? What was happening in the mind at the moment?
Right. So if mindfulness is good, the way I experience it is as more of a sense of space. It's more of a sense of space in the mind. And so when the words come to the ear and go to the heart, then you'll notice a feeling of an unpleasant feeling. If it's words that you don't like, you actually notice the unpleasant feeling, and then the reaction can start to come. And you'll know if it's a skillful or unskillful reaction. With the more spaciousness and clarity in the mind, it gives you some choice. Sometimes it might just be a couple of seconds, but if mindfulness is poor, you're already speaking before you notice the irritation. It's just coming out like that. Why do you always do like this? How many times have I told you? And then halfway through, I wish I didn't say that. But when mindfulness is good, it's like, oh, there it is again. Oh, about to say something. And you can just say, stop. And it doesn't mean necessarily that you won't say something, but you can then ask yourself, is this the right time? What's the right way to say it? Is there any point even saying it? So I used to argue with my parents a lot. They had very bad politics. And when I came to Thailand, first time I stayed for 9 months and I did 5 meditation retreats and I became a Buddhist. And I went back and I didn't argue with them. And it wasn't that they didn't have bad politics, that politics were as bad as before. But there was enough wisdom to understand that they're probably not going to change. There's no point arguing with them. And they were so impressed. My mother, she said, if you want to be a monk, you have my blessing. Before I asked, It wasn't that she just wanted me to leave. It was that she said, I used to worry about you so much, I didn't know what you were going to do with your life. Because they'd asked me when I was a teenager, what are you going to do with your life? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I mean, I don't know. I was accepted to university. I didn't go. I got a job with the government civil service. I quit after 1 month, couldn't stand it. So many times I made my parents cry when I didn't go to university, when I quit the government job. I was washing dishes and studying acting instead. What are you going to do with your life? I don't know. So she said, I was so worried about you, but I knew you'd find your place. And this is what feels right. You've found something. So just not arguing with them, they develop more respect. But it was because there was enough clarity and enough wisdom, I could say to myself, don't go there. It's not going to help anything. Just, I'm getting upset. They're going to stay the people they are. And but that was the result of daily meditation for nine months. There's enough clarity to be almost like a completely different person, but actually still having the same reactions. But not, the reaction doesn't completely fill the mind, and you have a choice whether you express it in speech and actions or not. So that's also one of the value of the daily practice, is that it gives you a lot more choice, a lot more space, a lot more coolness. So, yeah. Same with pain. Patiently enduring with pain in daily meditation practice has great benefits that you wouldn't even imagine. You just kind of think, I thought meditation was supposed to be peaceful. Every time I sit, it's just pain. And it's like, yes, but you're developing more patience with pain. So when we get into contentious issues with other people, we're actually reacting to an unpleasant feeling in our minds. What they say becomes an unpleasant feeling in our mind, and then we react to that. But if you are capable of being patiently enduring and being patient with an unpleasant feeling, you don't have to. And then it can be very empowering that, okay, I can just put up with this painful feeling until it ceases. I don't have to contend with this person. Yeah, you start to have a lot more choice. And the patiently enduring makes good karma. When you're doing your mental cultivation, patiently enduring with a painful feeling, spreading loving kindness to yourself, all of that is actually producing merit. Because the merit that comes from mental cultivation is superior. And rather than blindly reacting and making more bad karma, well, the more contentious we are with contentious people, in our future we have more of them, kind of multiplying like a virus. But the more you cultivate patience, forgiveness, loving kindness, the more you're going to meet people with those qualities in the future. So, yeah.
Ajahn, thank you for the Dhamma talk. Ajahn, I want to asking, when do the meditation, when the auto color is coming, then it's very colorful, then we although know to focus to the object, to the breath, but sometimes we cannot control, then we distract with the auto color. So
What color? What is it?
it's auto color when you see the purple,
In front.
green,
In front,
yes,
okay,
in front.
yeah.
Then also have the bling bling. That's me very distract. I know it's just observe, but sometimes very hard to focus the object.
The breath.
Yes.
So you have to set the intention at the very beginning of the sit, before the colors come up.
No, during the meditation, I don't
Yep.
set any.
Yeah.
Others,
No, what I'm saying to you is you have to. Because setting the intention will have an effect on, the mind is the forerunner. So it's like making a determination. So you make the determination, I'm going to place my awareness consistently on the feelings of the breathing. That's my intention. So when you have that intention clearly, that's part of the problem. You can't stay with your object because you haven't determined that you're going to be with the object. So you have that intention, I'm going to make the breath the main object. So that when that comes up, you've dropped that into consciousness. And then the reason the lights are appearing is the mind is developing some concentration, but it developed a concentration through being mindful of the breathing. So the thing to do is maintain the mindfulness of the breathing. The breathing probably gets more subtle. So then you have to attenuate your awareness to become more subtle. Probably what would happen is the color will become one steady color, often white or gold. Even then you don't give the attention to the light. You keep giving the attention to the breathing. At some point it might seem like the breathing stops. The breathing doesn't stop, but the mind is turning inwards away from its awareness of the breathing. The mind is coming into mind, and you're actually seeing the radiance of mind. But you have to take it to that point where the breathing seems to stop and the color becomes a stable one color. But even then, you're not trying to focus on the color. Then you just take the peacefulness as your object. But it is a good sign. But when it comes to the experiences of rapture and these kind of nimittas, they call them in Thai, that it's important not to become fascinated or distracted. You actually continue to stay with the meditation object that brought you to that point, and you go deeper. So, yeah.
So when do the meditation, when sudden we see the very bright light, so how we
It's
can
just
do?
like you should have, if mindfulness is there, it's seeing. It's just a more subtle type of visual consciousness. So it's like some people hear things, some people have very quite amazing visions, but it's actually just mindfully aware of seeing, giving the attention to the feelings of the breathing. Just like something's on TV that you're not interested, you don't want to watch, so you don't watch it. It's just there.
This means just aware about it, then ignore them, focus the object. This means aware about that. This means
Just know it, but you give your interest to the breath. Give your attention to the breath, and just know that, without being fascinated.
okay. Thank you, Ajahn.
I wish you good luck. Yeah.
Ajahn, can I ask a question? Ajahn, can you share with us how to deal with remorse? No, throughout our life, probably we have done a lot of things unmindfully, unskillfully as well. Then now we come to learn about Dhamma, then we have a lot of regrets and remorse. So probably Ajahn can give us some advice.
So who doesn't have regrets? Is there anyone in the room with no regrets? Did anybody not make some mistakes? Come on, even one person? Is there one person didn't make any mistakes? One person without regrets? Isn't that interesting? Not one person who didn't make mistakes or regrets. Me too. I have some regrets. So I think we have to respect the power of greed, hatred, and delusion. And we have to be humbled by the forces that we're up against. And then we have to have compassion. But it's important that you understand that I made these mistakes because I didn't know better. Even if on one level you know better, if you made the mistake, it meant that you didn't deeply, truly know better. The kilesas were still more powerful than the mindfulness and wisdom. So we have to have compassion for that. And you're already going to have to experience the karma of having made mistakes and done unskillful things, so that's enough. You don't need to add self-flagellation to the experience. So probably you have to forgive yourself. So it's like, and you just say to yourself, okay, I was acting under the influence of ignorance, I didn't know better, I made some mistakes, I forgive myself. And then we can do things like you make compensatory gestures. So you do good things, consciously do good things. So if we were mean and stingy, we go out of our way to be generous and kind. And if we told lies, we can do things like print Dhamma books or support websites, or we can spread truth. And you can kind of try to make up for it. But not because you feel guilty, just because you understand that That was unskillful. I want to consciously develop the skillful. After a period of time, when you've done so many good, skillful things, it's more balanced. It's like you don't focus on just the mistakes you made. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Tanajan. I have a question. I understand that the practice of the monastics, you sleep little, but for laity, we don't sleep enough, you get tired, you get sick. So what are the reflections or motivating factors for us to get up that bit earlier in the morning? And my struggle is with sleep. Sometimes I want to wake up to sit, but then, succumb to sleep again.
I don't think the issue is getting up earlier, the issue is going to bed earlier. And if you look at your social media habits, I'm sure that if you can cut back on that area, you'll be able to sleep earlier. So I think making some kind of resolution not to sleep later than 11, not to waste time on stupid things like Facebook, not to answer all of your WhatsApp, WeChat and Line messages. So if we don't give too much energy to those things, you will have energy for your practice, but you have to set parameters. It's like, even if I haven't answered all of my Line messages, I'm sleeping at 11. If I don't have time to check Facebook today, so be it. Didn't upload 3 pictures of myself on Instagram today. Never mind. I mean, sometimes students are studying a lot. There is that. But if you train yourself if you have a consistent meditation practice, you should find that you're able to rest within the meditation to some degree. Then you need less sleep. But you need to have the daily practice before you start to get that result, where you can actually rest in the clarity. And studies have shown that some of the things that happen while we're sleeping happen while we're meditating. The immune system does function better after a period of meditation. So it is beneficial for health as well. And in general, if you meditate more, you don't need as much sleep. But you have to do it for a long enough period of time that you actually see those results. So, yeah.
Thank you, Tanajan.
Ajahn, just now you mentioned about speech, skillful speech. So what I encounter is that sometimes, people invite you to go somewhere but you can't tell them why you can't go because it may offend them. So you have to tell white lies.
No, you can be creative with the truth. This is something that I learned in Thailand, because Australians are very straightforward, and they'll just tell you why they're doing something or why they're not doing something. But Thai people will tell you the part of the truth that they think you need to know. It's not tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's tell the part of the truth that is convenient and the least embarrassing. So sometimes if I'm receiving guests and it's going on too long, I sometimes say, "Excuse me, I have an important appointment." My important appointment is with my walking meditation path. It's not a lie. It's like, I have a commitment to my daily practice. That's an appointment that I have to keep. I'm sorry, I have an important appointment. I have to go. Lovely to see you. Bye. So think of the ways that you can say it. So also, if people are a little bit offended, that's okay. You can live with that. If what you're doing is the right thing, how many family events, how many more families do you want? How many more lives with family events are you signing up for? So it's okay if you don't have the intention to hurt people's feelings. And sometimes in having integrity and committing to doing what you know you need to do, you might offend some people, but you might inspire some people as well. Some people think, oh, I noticed the way you do that, it really inspired me, I'm going to do more practice, I'm going to be more committed. So,
I just want to know, like, is there a baseline as to what we can, like you say, creative?
so it needs to be understood like this. We're often looking like lawyers. What can we get away with? What you need to do is understand that Dhamma is truth. The way that you're going to liberate your mind from suffering is penetrative insight into ultimate truth of the way things are. So whatever karma you make with deception is a step in the opposite direction. So if you know that satya barami, truthfulness barami, is an important factor, right speech, part of what's going to liberate you, then you don't want to make karma with deception, as little as possible. I tend to be brutally honest, and I have been since childhood, can't help it really, and got me in a lot of trouble. But it also got me to Buddhist training, and it got me to be a monk, and it got me to meet arahants, So there's a certain value in having unflinching, uncompromising, tell it like it is. Because I also wanted to know it like it is. What's the truth? What's the real truth? What do we do about this situation? So you think of teachers, and even since the time of the Buddha, there was Devadatta, who took a certain number of the monks away and wasn't teaching correct teachings. So the kind of teachers we meet and how accurately they teach Dhamma and whether it's the true Dhamma is also dependent upon how much we've respected truthfulness. So the degree to which you make karma with deception, in the future you might meet teachers who don't teach correctly. You might get a deceptive Dhamma. This is very scary. So if you want to meet the true Dhamma, and you want to realize the true Dhamma, we have to make strenuous efforts at truthfulness. And we have to be very careful not to make karma that might manifest as us being deceived or deluded. So be courageous, just tell it like it is. I'm not going because I don't want to go. I'm going to meditate. It's okay. I think it's okay. I don't have a Chinese family, so yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Ajahn, hello. Ajahn, thank you for your insightful talk. We have a question here. When we see the default qualities of the mind, usually what happens is that we will use that and view that as self, and associate that with our own character. So can Ajahn advise on how can we have more positive association with the defilements that we see when we are more mindful? Thank you.
So again, I think meditation plays an important role, because if you meditate enough, when the defiling qualities are in the mind, we have to train ourselves to notice when that ceases. So whatever thoughts are associated with various defilements, 16 upakilesa, pride, competitiveness, greed, lust, envy, also there's a list of defilements. All of them arise, stay for some time and cease. And so if you have enough clarity and you sit long enough to just notice the moment it ceases and then rest in that peace, train yourself to identify more with the peace that comes once the defilement ceases than with the defilement. It's one of the benefits of practice, is you know you're not that. You know it's better than that. But we have to have enough mindfulness, enough patient endurance to watch it arise, stay for some time, cease, and then notice the clarity, the spaciousness, the radiance afterwards. That's much closer to the truth of who we are. So,
Morning, Ajahn. Ajahn, I would like to ask if we can still trust people that cheated on us before.
Yeah, forgiveness and trust are different issues. I often, in my own practice, I forgive anybody and everybody, everything, because I don't want to hold a grudge, and I believe in karma. But trust is a different issue. So there's a couple of people in my life that I'm fairly confident I won't trust again this lifetime. But it doesn't mean I don't have loving kindness for them. So, yeah, we have to be intelligent. People do have negative qualities, negative traits. People can be harmful. If a person has admitted their fault and made some kind of commitment to not do it again, then I think it's nice to give people a chance. And if they prove once again that they're not worthy of your trust, then I think clear, firm boundaries are okay. Yeah. An area where we all need to do work is how to be skillfully assertive without being aggressive. It's perfectly possible. We just say very, very calmly, I'm not doing that. No, it's not okay. And mean it. You don't have to yell, no! It's not necessary. No.
Skyoto Ajahn. Just now you touched a bit about chanting, which is interesting to me. Do you consider chanting as a form of meditation?
Mm-hmm.
Because Thai tradition, you also use the Buddha. I think that's a kind of chanting. But what are kind of attainments you can achieve by doing and practicing chanting?
I think you could develop it to the state of Upajjhara Samadhi. So suppose I can chant the Dhammacakka Sutta by memory. I can chant the Parittas by memory. I can probably chant 2 hours without looking at a book, which is, you should expect that after being a monk for 20 years. So when I'm chanting, that's right recollection, that's mindfulness. And if you chant with a sense of loving devotion towards the Buddha, it's a Buddhanusati, it's a samatha practice, and you can have almost jhana, but then it's a great preparation. So if you chant for half an hour with faith, love, devotion, then afterwards the mind can become very peaceful. We've already pacified the hindrances to a significant degree, so that when you come to turn the awareness to the breathing, there's already a certain amount of clarity and collectedness that's willing to be with the breath. So that's why I think chanting is so helpful, because as I was saying, if you chant loudly, energetically, quickly, a text which is a little bit complicated, you can't really be thinking about what you did during the day, or who upset you, who didn't do what you wanted them to do. And by the end of half an hour, it's like, it's a completely different mind to the one before you started chanting. So it's, but yes, the mind can become very peaceful. And particularly in the Mahayana tradition, some of their pujas are going for 3 hours. 3 hours of chanting, and I'm sure they're getting quite peaceful mind states. When you really take it on as a practice, it's, yeah, but it's like anything. You have to give good energy to it, and devotion to it, and then you'll see the real benefits from it. So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will take the last questions.
Thank you, Ajahn. I would like to ask the questions in regards to, we always say that we associate with the wise to learn the Dhamma, but what happens when we face seniors who actually have a lot of knowledge in Dhamma, but does not practice in actions?
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
So you separate knowledge from real wisdom. Knowledge is three. There's three ways Lord Buddha explains that we develop wisdom. One is through listening and studying. The next way is through deep contemplation. The next way is through direct insight coming from practice. So you hear the concept, you consider it, does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense. Until you develop a real conviction. Okay, I'm going to practice in accordance with that practice, and then you experience the benefit of the practice, then it becomes true wisdom. They talk about panya sanya, wisdom perceptions, but then there's the vipassana jnana, direct insight. So I think to be grateful for the knowledge is good, because we can get into just fault finding and focusing on the fault. So it's like we tend to be idealistic. And idealism is good, but it has to have, we have to have perspective. So sometimes some of our first teachers may have given us the teachings and the knowledge was our beginning, but they might not be perfect, but we can be grateful for that. So rather than focus on feeling disappointed or rather than focusing on their faults. I mean, Luang Por Chah said, when it comes to mental cultivation, we should be looking at our own fault 90%. If one wants to develop oneself, 90% of what we're trying to improve is inward, 10% is on other people. I think that's correct. But it's also okay to move on. So if someone who's been teaching you, you can see that they don't have good sila, then it's fine not to associate with them anymore. But leave the situation feeling grateful for the good thing that they gave you. And
Okay. Thank you, Ajahn, for the insightful Dhamma sharing and patient and clear answer to all our questions. Let's fold our palm together and recite sadhu to thank Ajahn. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.